Today we're going to learn how to implement our own custom MCP servers and how to use them in tools like Cursor and Claude Desktop. So let us get right into it. Alright, so let me briefly show you what this is actually useful for. Right here I have Cursor opened up. It is connected to two MCP servers, one for creating GitHub issues, another one for sending emails. So what I could do now is, for example, create a new GitHub issue that changes, or not that changes, but for changing the content of the print message here. So I'm gonna submit this, and then it's going to recognize, hey, there is a tool. I have the MCP tool here for creating a GitHub issue, and what it does now is it calls this endpoint issue title and issue text run tool. And then also in the next step, I can say now send an email with the summary of what you did to a certain email, and it's going to do that as well. So I can say send a summary of what you did to tutorial2@neural9.com. So now it's still generating some stuff here. Actually, I don't even know why. So let me just send this. I'm not sure if the issue was created. Let's take a look here in my GitHub. There you go. Update print message in main py. It created this issue here automatically while I was coding. And now in the next step here, it wants to send an email to tutorial2@neural9.com, run the tool. And in my mailbox here, I should be able to see an email from tutorial1@neural9. I successfully created a GitHub issue for whatever. So these are just two examples, but the idea is you can create your own custom MCP servers to implement whatever functionality you like, whatever functionality you want to use with Cursor or Claude Desktop or any other MCP client. For those of you who don't know what MCP is, I have a video on it. It's Model Context Protocol. It standardizes communication between, you could say, AI tools and functionality. So MCP server provides functionality, MCP client uses functionality, and you usually combine it with some large language model that then calls the tools that are provided by the server. So now that we know what we're going to build, let us get started. I'm going to go to my tutorial directory here, and what I want to do is I want to implement these two examples that I showed you. I want to implement an MCP server for sending emails and an MCP server for creating Git issues in a specific repository. So we're going to have a token with permissions for one specific repository, and then we can just create issues there. You can of course make this customizable by providing the repository name and also the token if you want to, but we're going to keep it simple. I'm going to create a directory. Let's call it MCP underscore, I don't know, mail function, whatever, MCP underscore mail function. In here now, I want to create main.py. And actually, before we do that, let me just write to this file. Let's keep it empty. I'm going to set up the environment. Now you can do that either with pip3 install, and the packages, you can do that with virtual environments. I'm going to use UV, so I'm going to say here, you can use UV or you can use whatever you want, but I'm going to say here UV init. I'm going to say UV add, and now we're going to add the following packages, actually just two of them for the first example. Python-.env, this is for loading environment variables from a file, and then also this is the important one, MCP, Model Context Protocol. These two packages are needed, and then what we're going to do is we're going to go into our file and we're going to start with some imports. We're going to import OS, we're going to import SMTP-lib. We need SMTP because we're sending emails, we're not receiving emails, we're not reading emails, we're sending emails. And then also from email.message import email message. Then from .env import load.env, and then from MCP server.fastMCP import fastMCP. Now, if you are familiar with FastAPI, the syntax is going to be quite convenient to you because you already know how FastAPI works. And in this case, all you have to do is instead of saying app is equal to FastAPI, you say MCP is equal to fastMCP, and you still use the same sort of annotations. You just annotate the things as tools and not as endpoints with post, get, and so on. So the idea is we create an MCP instance. Before that, we also load the environment variables, which we're going to create here in a second. And then what we do is we just define tools. And in my case, I'm just going to use a single tool here. You can add multiple tools, but the idea is I say mcp.tool, and then I define a function, send email, for example. And this function will take parameters. These parameters are going to be to, so the recipient, which is a string. It's going to be a subject, which is also going to be a string, and it's going to be the body of the email, which is also going to be a string. And this whole thing is going to return a string as a result as well, because we want to give the client some feedback that it's actually worked. So we want to give it an error message or a success message, and the rest is going to be implemented here in a second. Now, what we need to do the implementation is we need to have some basic information. So we need to have the mail account. So what email are we actually logging into to send an email? In my case, this is going to be tutorial1@neural9.com, and the message is going to be sent, in my case, to tutorial2@neural9.com. You can use whatever email account you have or want to use for this, but you need to have a mail account. So mail account is equal to, and we're going to get it from the environment variables, which we're going to define in a second, but let's assume it's already there. So os.getInf and then mail_account. And we're going to do the same thing for 3 more values. We're going to have mail account, then mail passwords, which is going to be, of course, mail password here as well. And then the server information, we want to have the SMTP server, which we're going to use, SMTP server. And then we also want to have the SMTP port, depending on the protocol that is being used. This can be different. And this information, we will provide that information as an environment file, so as a .env file. So I'm going to create .env here, and this .env file, I'm going to copy paste it here. I'm not even going to censor it because I'm going to delete these 2 accounts once I'm done with this tutorial, so you can see the credentials here. It doesn't really matter. We have here mail account is equal to tutorial1@neural9.com. Mail password is equal to the password. IMAP server, actually we don't need that. This is not necessary. SMTP server is equal to mail your server DE. Now, this is actually the name of the server. I'm using Hetzner, so that is actually the server name of Hetzner, your server.de. This is what the server is called. Whatever provider you're using, you need to figure out what the SMTP server is. So Gmail SMTP server, Proton SMTP server, or whatever email you're using, just Google the name of your provider and then SMTP server and also the port. Actually, these 2 are also not necessary. I tried to implement more features, so I had some more variables here. But these are actually the ones we need: mail account, mail password, SMTP server, SMTP port. Provide them in the .env file like this, and then calling load.env will load the .env file, and you will have the information here as an environment variable, and you can use it with os.getInf. Now, why do we do it like that? Because we don't want to have the credentials clear text in the code. We want to be able to provide them using an environment's variable file. So now that we have this, we just need to log in and send an email. We're going to say here try message is equal to email message. Then we're going to say message from is going to be our email. So mail account, message to is going to be the recipient. So to message subject is going to be equal to the subject. And message set content will set the content to be equal to the body that was passed. So that is the mail object, the message object. And now we need to authenticate ourselves. We're going to say with SMTP lib.smtp. Here we're going to pass the SMTP server and the SMTP port and as server. And then we're going to say server.startTLS. Actually, we don't need a colon here. Start TLS, and then server login with the credentials. So mail account and mail password. And then server.sendMessage message. That's basically it. If this works, we're going to say return success. If there is a problem, except we're going to say return failed, and let's say exception SE due to STR E. And of course, we need to make this a formatted string, and we need to put this into curly brackets. There you go. That is essentially it. Now, I'm not even sure if we need to add this, but I'm going to add the if underscore underscore name underscore underscore is equal to main. If that's the case, MCP run transport equal to stdio, since we're running this on the same system. That is basically the entire thing. This is a full MCP server that does one thing. In this case, we just have a single tool. You can have multiple tools in the same server, in the same file, just create additional functions. What this basically means now is whatever client you're adding this tool to or the server to will understand there is a tool called send email that I can use to send emails. I mean, it's going to just derive that from the name. You can also provide a doc string if you want to specify that here in terms of text. I'm just going to let the function name describe what it does. And we have two, subject and body. So it's pretty clear what has to be passed here. And the question is now, how do I actually add this to my config? Or how do I actually add this to my client? So you do that with a JSON file where you put all the MCP servers that you want to use. In the case of Claude Desktop, that is located in .config, at least on Linux, and then Claude and then config, or what was it? Claude config. Oh, I need to go into Claude and then Claude config or Claude desktop config. Here I had some financial plots, stuff that I tried, but the basic idea is you just delete everything in this file and you provide the config. I'm not going to do this for Claude, but what I'm going to do for Cursor is going to be the exact same thing for Claude. So the thing that I'm going to show you here in a second for Cursor, you can just copy paste that into this Claude desktop config, and it's going to have the same effect. You're going to be able to use that in Claude. So I'm gonna go now back here to my home directory, and here now I'm gonna go to .cursor mcp JSON. And in my case, I already have the correct command here, so I'm gonna delete all of this. And if the file is blank, what you wanna do is you wanna provide now the commands or the specification for the specific tools. So you wanna start with curly brackets, and you want to say, okay, I'm defining the MCP servers, and this is going to be another dictionary, so to say. So we provide curly brackets again, and then we just provide a name. In my case now, I'm going to call this mail tool, and this mail tool will be another dictionary. And we're going to provide the following here, the command to run this. So I'm going to say here, command is equal to, and depending on how you set this up, you can just use Python here, or in my case, I'm going to do UV, since I have this environment UV, and then the arguments are going to be args, are going to be a list of certain things. So it's going to be dash dash directory, it's going to be home neural 9 documents programming neural 9 tutorial MCP mail function. That is the full path. And then I want to say run and then main.py. That is how I would execute this with UV. So we do UV run main.py, and we provide a directory where this file is located. That is the command. So now by specifying this, any client knows how to call this tool. So I can close this. I can open up Cursor, and we're going to hopefully see here that it understands these tools. So I have the main PY here with a hello world and the thing I showed you in the demonstration. You can go to settings and you can go to tools, and you will see that I have mail tool with one tool enabled. Very important, at least on Linux. I'm not sure if that's the case for Windows as well. But on Linux, you're not allowed to have white spaces. So if in the path you have some white spaces in the path to your application, at least Cursor is not going to be able to handle that. So make sure you have hyphens or underscores, but not white spaces. So in this case now, it knows about the tool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say very basic, send an email to tutorial. Actually, let's start a new chat here. Send an email to tutorial2@neural9.com and say hello world to it. I don't know. Let's just do it. You can see here, I'll send an email to tutorial2 calling send email. We can see what it does to tutorial2@neural9.com, hello world, run tool. And what's going to happen now here as a result of that is I'm going to get a new email, and this email says hello world. So as you can see, this works. This can be very useful if you want to send emails to certain people while developing. You can say something like, I don't know, I get this exception in the chat here. So take the exception, summarize it, and actually I'm blocking this now with my camera. Sorry about that. Let me put it here. I can say take the exception, summarize it, and send it to john@company.ai, whatever. So that is quite convenient if you have this right in your cursor or Claude desktop or whatever. This can be quite useful. And now we're going to do another one, which is we're going to do GitHub issues. And for this, I have this one specific repository here, which is called tutorial MCP repo. And I have generated an access token for this specific repository. So if you don't know how to generate GitHub tokens, you can watch my video on that. Basic idea is you go to settings, you go to developer settings, and you just create a token, a fine-grained access token with access to this specific repository. I'm going to assume that you already know how to do this, so I'm not going to show it here to not waste any time. This is also just an example, so feel free to do whatever you want. But we're going to create now a second MCP server. So I'm going to go back here. I'm going to create a directory called MCP issue function. And in here now, I'm going to do the same thing as before, uv init, and then uv add MCP python.env, and also this time pygithub. So that is now all added. For the environment file, we're going to create an environment file, and we're going to say access token is equal to the token that you get from GitHub. I'm not going to show mine here, but this is some token here. You save the file. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to copy it from my prepared code. So I'm going to say here, go back again, go to prepared, go to MCP server, go to MCP git, and then here get the environment file and copy it to this directory. So now I have my access token for the same repository. And then I'm going to go to the main py file, and we're going to write the code for this MCP server. So we're going to say here again, import OS. We're going to say from GitHub import GitHub. We're going to say from .env import load.env. And then we're going to say from MCP server fast MCP import fast MCP. I'm going to say again, MCP is equal to fast MCP. And also don't forget to do load.env. There you go. And then we're going to say here mcp.tool def create issue. We're going to pass to it an issue title, which is going to be string, and an issue text, which is also going to be string, and it's going to return string. There you go. And what we're going to do here, quite simple, is we're going to say g is equal to GitHub os.get environment access token. And then we're going to say repo is equal to g.get repo. Make sure you have the permission for that. In my case, this is neural9/tutorial-mcp-repo. Again, creating a repo and creating an access token. I'm not going to show how to do that in this video today. I hope you know that. Quite simple. Otherwise, just use a different example for whatever you need. And then we're going to say issue is going to be equal to repo.create issue with the title being equal to issue title and the body being equal to issue text. And if this works, we're just going to return success. There you go. That's that. We're going to do the same thing as before. If __ name and so on. Just the basic stuff. then mcp.run transport is equal to stdio. That is that. What do we need to do now? We need to go back to our configuration. So in my case, cursor and then mcp.json. Always running the cd command, of course, neovim. And now, of course, you don't add an additional MCP servers. You just add an additional tool. So you add a comma here, you copy this, you paste it down here, and you just say, instead of mail tool, we're going to say issue tool, or let's say git issue tool. And I just have to adjust the path to be MCP issue function. I think I called it like this, and then run main py. Then we can close that. We can restart cursor, and hopefully it understands now that it has an additional tool for git issues. So let's go to tools, and it says configuration error. Okay, probably I think the comma is the problem. So let's go to cursor, MCP JSON, remove this comma here, save that, restart the application. And actually it still has a problem. Let me take a look at that again. Cursor, MCP JSON. Actually, I am missing a comma here. Okay, now it actually worked. 0 tools enabled, so there is a problem, I guess. Maybe the naming of the path. Let me see again. Cursor, MCP JSON. Let me go to the directory here. MCP issue function. That is actually correct, isn't it? Maybe the code is problematic. So let's go to the directory, MCP issue function, and let's try to run this. uv run main.py. It says cannot import name GitHub from GitHub. I'm not sure if I added the correct dependency. uv add py GitHub is the correct one. Oh, actually, I need to use lowercase h. It's GitHub like this. Okay, so that was the problem, I guess. Let's try again. Let's run this again. And now, hopefully, we see that we can use a tool here. 1 tool is enabled. Perfect. So now I can do something like create this new thing, create an issue with the text hello UV. I don't know. And of course, the use case for this is not to just tell it to create an issue, but to do something like, chat with it. It suggests something, and then I say, hey, yeah, turn this into an issue. So it's not me providing all the context. It's me talking to it. It's saying, hey, I have an idea. Do you want me to implement X, Y, Z? And I would say something like, not yet, but create an issue for this. And then it would just go ahead and do that. So run the tool. Let's see if that works. Looks like an error with the git issue tool. What is the problem? Did I provide some bad token? Let me just see. Oh, okay, same problem as before. I'm using GitHub now with uppercase H just in the code. Probably I also need to remove the code now from here. Otherwise, it's just going to create an issue every time. Create this issue on GitHub now. There you go, call and create issue. Let's run this. The content is not that important. But now let's go back to our issues here, reload this, implement dashboard for Hello World app, and you can see it created here this issue. Again, the actual use case would be you're working on something, you have an idea, Cursor, of course, knows about your code, and you just say, hey, I want to have this as an issue. I want to have this as an issue. Create 5 issues, stuff like that. And then maybe send a summary as an email or an email summary to john@company.ai, whatever. And this is fully customizable. Just use the same principle. Go to the code that we wrote. You will find also a link to it in the description down below. Use the pattern. Use multiple tools per server if you want to. Just defining these tools adds functionality to your agent. So now your Cursor agent, your Claude desktop agent, whatever you're using, can use these tools easily. And you can customize this to do whatever you want. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting the like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. See you in the next video and bye.